Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton here, and Steve's Storm School is in session. Hopefully the internet's working better than last week and we don't have any glitches there. And I will flip on my iPhone here to some big pictures. I even have a big fancy cursor to kind of point stuff out. And we'll talk a lot about weather. One thing we're doing is going through a quiz that I posted on my Facebook page, or you can find if you scroll through some of my tweets at Steve Templeton on Twitter. Hey, what's up to the cases? They're on here. I'll give a shout out to people too, just, especially the kiddos. Give me your kiddos' name and age, and we'll give you a shout out, and hopefully you do well in the quiz. Again, the quiz is on the Facebook page. You just have to scroll down a little bit. It's just one post, and you'll see 10 questions there. Sean, who's 10 years old from Troy, Missouri, is on with us. I'm going to try and get my Facebook Live running up on a different computer so I can see kind of the comments in a little bigger view here. We'll get started in maybe about a minute or so, just give some folks a chance to hop on. William is 9, and Avery says hi from the Scots. Let's see here. So if you're just joining us, what we're looking for is throw out your kiddo who's on, or if you're typing for your kiddo, name, age. We'll get to some questions eventually, but we're actually going to answer our trivia questions first, or quiz questions. And the quiz is worth half your grade, so make sure you do well in this, kids. It's not worth half your grade. That's just my joke. It never gets old to me. All right, we will get to some questions in a second. Let's start off with the quiz. Let's get things going here. Hey, Carson and Kayla from Eureka. Carson's 11 and Kayla is 8. All right, switching over here. So first question for you. Fact or myth, a bathroom is always a safe shelter during a tornado? What do you think? It is a myth. Absolutely. Stephanie Janey said, done with my quiz. Let's see how you do, Stephanie. So this is a myth. Here's the deal. A bathroom can be kind of a safe place if it meets 3 requirements, okay? Number 1, it's got to be in the lowest level. Check this out. Look at the stairs to nowhere. What if you were in the bathroom up here? There's no outside walls. There's no inner walls. There's no bedroom. There's no toilet. The toilet has been lifted and thrown. Gone, okay? So rule number 1, you got to get to the lowest level. Rule number 2, you got to make sure that the bathroom is not along an outside wall. Look at this bathroom. Well, where's the outside wall? It's gone. So even if you're hiding in that bathtub, you have debris flying at you at like 100, 120 miles an hour. This is EF2 tornado. 0 is the weakest damage. 5 would be the strongest. Grammy, Winnie, and Anthony, age 7, are watching from Park Hills. Hey there, guys. All the way from Park Hills. Love it. So bottom line is you got to be in the lowest level, and you can't be in a room that has, or a bathroom that has just one wall between you and the outside. In fact, if you look here, see that door to the hallway? Even the whole roof isn't gone, only partially part of the roof. So if you were in that hallway, you'd probably be safer. If you were in maybe a guest bathroom that has 2 walls between you and the outside, you would have been safer. Of course, the safest place to be would be the basement, but check that out. That's my 3rd rule. Make sure it has no windows. So a bathroom can be safe if it's on the lowest level. It's not along an outside wall. You want to put as many walls between you and the outside. And it has no windows. Ava is 8 and says hi. Christian 9 from Sunset Hills. And we've got the Seacrest from Livingston, Illinois. Cool. Notice, by the way, I mentioned be away from windows. Even if you're in the basement, see how that's cracked? So I don't know if it was a pebble, the basketball someone left in the yard, boom, that hit that window. So if you were in the basement during that tornado and you heard it, they say it sounds like a freight train. You got a little curious, you got near that window, something hit that window, and that something's flying at your face like 100 miles an hour, 120, and now you have the shards of glass in your face. So even if you're in the basement, you want to be away from windows. The Kavanaugh boys in Rock Hill are checking in. So too is Izzy, who's age 9 from Maryville, Illinois. Great to have you guys. All right, so if you're just joining us, love the kids' names and ages. Colton from Warrenton, from the Strasburgers. And I'll throw out some shout-outs, and we'll go through the quiz. After the quiz, we'll just open it up to questions. All right. How about this? How fast is a lightning return stroke? So I said return stroke because the return stroke part is the bright part you see here. That's what we think of as lightning. But in reality, lightning has something called step leaders that go down to the ground and build a road to the ground. Lightning needs a road. Once that road is built, the light cascades up at how fast? What do you think? This is incredible. 200 million miles per hour. This is from the science out there on YouTube. And even in slow-mo, you can't really see it. The light goes so fast, but it cascades up that channel. 200 million miles per hour. Awesome. Joe and Susan are in, the Petrowskis. Thank you. Benton is 6 and says hi from Cedar Hill. And we've got Ian 7 and Ben 4 from Wildwood. Hey to the Joneses. So 200 million miles per hour, that return stroke, that bright thing, that is the light that we think of as lightning. And boy, that's super fast. If you're just joining us, we're going through the quiz, which was posted on my Facebook page, so you can see those questions there, or just stay tuned, and you'll see the questions as they come up. Brady, age 10, from Creve Coeur. Hey, Brady. All right, let's see if you can get this one, Brady. It's okay, fact or myth, it's okay to drive through a flooded road if you have a big truck. So it turns out most injuries or worse from flash flooding occurs from men. What is it, dudes? Men at night in a vehicle. I don't know what it is about men. If you're a dude driving at night and it's raining hard, be especially careful. That's the majority of people who get injured from flash flooding. It might be because you think, I've got a big truck, I'm going to drive through this. Don't. Let me show you. Don't be this guy. Look at that. You don't know if that road is actually deteriorated and washed out. You don't know how deep the water is. Let me just give you, this is going to be incredible. So this is a myth. Even if you have a big truck, even if, let's say you got a school bus, right? Would you drive through flooded road? Watch this. This is incredible. Josh, age 9, from Escuda, is checking in with us here. Nick Greco said, big old truck. This is bigger than your big old truck, Nick. This is a school bus. That's the point where I turn around, okay? That's the point. There was a child on this bus too. Child and the bus driver were rescued. They were safe. No one was injured, okay? But as you watch this, you're going, oh no, you didn't know how deep it was. The bus driver thought, I can drive through that. Didn't know how deep. Deep enough to float an entire school bus down the river. I mean, that is scary. We've got Claire and Megan Campbell, age 9. Hello to the Campbells. Look at that. And again, they were rescued. A school bus driver was rescued. This was in Texas, and the child was okay, unharmed. But this could have been a real bad and worse type of situation. And actually, I think the school bus driver faced criminal charges too, meaning I think they had to go to court, maybe even jail. All right, a hook echo on radar means there's always a tornado. Okay, here's a little tip for kids. When you take quizzes and tests and the question says something, 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 always pay really close attention, because always means all the time. And there's usually exceptions, right? So this is one of those cases, okay? Myth. This, if you didn't know it, this is a hook echo. See how this hooks around like this? That is just a shape. Now we call it echo because the way that radar works is it sends out a beam of energy. It bounces off the raindrops like an echo and comes back to the radar. So it's an echo. And it turns out when they first kind of discovered how to use radar during World War II, British were using it to figure out where enemy planes were coming, with German planes. And it was bouncing off of the stuff, not the planes. It was bouncing off of rain. And later they were like, wait a second. Light bulb, we can use this to figure out where rain is. And of course, it's been honed and tweaked to make it even better. But that's why it's called an echo. So it's a hook and it's an echo because that's what we're looking at, raindrops. Now, the raindrops are rotating. It turns out this hook echo actually did produce a tornado, but they don't always. Let me show you. This is in real life what a hook echo with no tornado would look like. See that spin? So this storm is spinning, and the radar can't see what's on the ground because it would hit buildings and telephone poles and schools, so it can't go around the ground. It just goes up here. So it sees this spin, and there would be a hook echo. But I'll play it again. There is no tornado. Thanks to science out there on YouTube, Great Storm Chaser, who has this awesome footage. But again, this is a supercell thunderstorm, persistently rotating. It would produce a hook echo here on radar, and nope, that's where the tornado would be. Nothing going. Now, hello to the roses. Let's see. I wanted to be a meteorologist since I was 4, and now I'm 12. To Brody. Awesome, Brody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you learn a lot here, and it'll help you ace your Meteorology 101 course when you're in college majoring in meteorology. So the deal is radar has been improved. So like from the 50s when it kind of came out around the United States just to see rain, then I'm sure you've heard Doppler. Doppler helped us see the direction that raindrops see the spin. There was another change in like 2013 called dual pole. We like big fancy words in meteorology. It makes us sound smarter than we really are, a lot like lawyers. No offense to lawyers, but you do sound smart because you use big words. So we do too. So dual pole radar is able to actually see not just this, but this. It can see both this portion of the raindrop and this portion. So you can see the size. The reason that's important, this is going to look complicated, but I'm going to break it down for you, okay? The reason that's important is because here's where we have a hook echo. Now it's hooking this way. So we suspect that's a tornado. We look over here. This is the Doppler portion. This tells us the red is raindrops moving away from the radar. Green is towards. The radar is right here, by the way. So what's happening is when the raindrop is moving towards the radar, it's green. Then it twists and rotates and it becomes red. And then it twists and rotates and becomes green. So this is telling us there's rotation. So those two things right there are a good indication of a tornado. But this is the dual pole part. See that little blue? What that's telling us is up in the air, there's not just raindrops and not just some hail. There's like huge, long things. Some of them might be skinny, some of them might be round. It's telling us that the shapes of things in the air that the radar is hitting off of, the echoes, are vastly different. Why? Because it's debris. It could be shingles. It could be a cow. This didn't lift a cow. It could be trees, it could be branches, it could be leaves. They're all these different sizes. And so that gives us this tornado debris signature. And so that's radar can actually see debris in the air. Wow, we've come a long way with technology. So what's next? What's next is I need you guys to become meteorologists, brilliant PhD meteorologists, make radar even better so that it's always 100% accurate, because it's not always. Remember, radar sees what's up above, not on the ground. That's why sometimes you get tornado warnings and there's no tornado. So you guys need to become meteorologists. I'm nobody special. I worked hard at school. I studied hard, but I'm really not that special. I'm not that good at math. And if I can do it, you can do it. You can become a meteorologist and you can help people, especially if you can redevelop radar. All right, let's move on to the quiz. How tall can clouds grow? Thanks to Daryl Herzman, who has this awesome video of this explosive cloud. What do you think? 30,000, 45,000, 50? Do you think it's more than twice Mount Everest? Yep. Mount Everest is about 29,000 feet. The tallest clouds are around 70,000, sometimes a little bit more than that. 74, 75,000. Brent Horseman joined. Hey, Brent. Brent, an old colleague of mine who's now down in Houston. Great to have you on board here. But the tallest clouds usually are in the tropics. Around here, a really, really tall severe thunderstorm is like around 60,000 feet. But either way, we're talking about double Mount Everest. Isn't that incredible? So clouds can grow extremely tall. And what you're watching over here on the right, this turns into an anvil cloud. What happens is the cloud goes up, 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 and it goes so high, it can't go up even more. And then the jet stream starts pushing the cloud at the top this way, and it spreads out and creates this little thing, which forms this anvil cloud. So if you Google what an anvil is, that looks like that cloud, and that's why we call it an anvil cloud. All right, hail. Hail can be clear, white, or both clear and white. Okay, if you look closely here, you can kind of see. See how in the inside there it's milky white, and in the outside it's clear? It can be both. It can be both. Look at this one. This is just pure milky white. That actually happened 2 weeks ago, I think, 3 weeks ago. This was hail that fell from, didn't hit everybody. In fact, I think this just hit parts of St. Charles County. Here, look at this, milky white, clear, milky white, clear. Okay, what's going on here? How does that happen? So the way hail forms is it goes up in the cloud and it kind of bounces up, and more water more water freezes onto it. So it's just kind of hitting this. There's an updraft and there's a downdraft. So it's in the updraft and it's kind of bouncing around in the updraft, and more water freezes onto it. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually it gets so heavy it falls to the ground. When that water freezes onto it, if it freezes quickly, because the water, let's say, is super cold and it really wants to freeze quickly, it traps air bubbles. And that's the milky white portion. But let's say the hail's a little closer to the ground, not quite near the ground, but just down where it's not as cold. It's cold, it wants to freeze, but it freezes slowly, and the water bubbles go bloop, 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 bloop. They leave, and when it freezes, it's clear. So this shows us these patterns, almost like tree rings, that this hail formed at different levels in the storm. One where the water was really, really cold and froze quickly and created that little nugget of white. And then it started maybe falling to the ground and it was more clear because the water was freezing slower. And then it got sucked back up into the updraft, and then you get this ring of white, and then it started to fall and you get the ring of clear, and then it got sucked back up to where it's really cold the higher up you go, and it gets this ring of, and so you get it, more and more rings. Pretty cool. And that's hail cut. It's been cut open in half. All right. Let's see. Hey, to Karen Johnson, and Jennifer Rose said she's 2 for 2 right now. Oh, this is not Karen. It's Jax, her son. Hey, Jax, what up? Shout out. That's a good shout out. Sharon Bradford said, that looks like a geode. It kind of does. Geodes are beautiful. Those rocks that you kind of cut in half and have crystals in them. Okay. Fact or myth, lightning is attracted to metal. That is a myth. That is a myth. Electricity flows through metal really good. Like, it's a good conductor of electricity. That's what we call it. But it's not really attracted, not at those great distances from a thunderstorm. I mean, there is no way that a thunderstorm that's twice the size of Mount Everest says, as a bolt starts to develop in the middle or even lower portion, says, oh, I'm going to go down and get that piece of metal. It doesn't work that way. It is a myth. Now, it flows through it quickly. So imagine you and I are on a metal beam, and I get hit by lightning. It's going to flash over my body into the metal and right to you, and you're going to get shocked, okay? By the way, if anyone gets hit by lightning, you can touch them immediately and perform CPR. First, call 911 or have someone else call 911. 2, you can perform CPR if they're not breathing. Oftentimes, that's what happens. So if they need it, you can perform CPR. So now imagine, instead of a metal beam, let's say we're on a rubber beam, the electricity goes over me into the rubber, and it's kind of like if you've ever tried to run in the water. Next time whenever we can go to pools again, next time you're at a pool, go to the waist deep or even knee deep section and try to run. It's hard. That's because the water is providing resistance against your body running through the water. Well, when lightning hits rubber, that particular material, or wood for that matter, provides resistance to the lightning as it tries to get to you. So the lightning hits me, goes through this rubber beam, and it tries to get to you, and it just runs out of energy, and it never gets to you. So, all right, let's go on with our next question. Oh, before I do, check this out. This is a perfect example of how lightning's not attracted to metal. Look at this. Busch Stadium here. If it were attracted to metal, it would have hit the foul pole. Let me play that again. Not only that, but so why didn't it hit the foul pole? Why didn't it hit the top? Here's another thing, fact or myth. Lightning is attracted to the tallest objects, not always. In this case, it didn't hit any of those buildings in the background. It didn't hit the lights up here. It came all the way down to the visitors' bullpen and got into the ground. No one was injured. Isn't that awesome? Thankfully. All right, let's see here. Fact or myth, the United States is the tornado capital of the world. Yep, yes indeed. Check this out. We have about, on average, depending on the period that you look at, about 1,200 a year. Canada's number 2 at 100. So we have about, on average, 1,100 tornadoes more than second place, which is Canada. And look, tornadoes happen all over. Tornado has been recorded on every continent except Antarctica. So why is the United States the capital? It has a lot to do with topography. So cold air from Canada, warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, they can clash over the United States. Now, warm air, cold air colliding does not create a tornado. It's one of the ingredients. But the reason those ingredients can even form a thunderstorm is because there's no mountains in the way. The Rocky Mountains are over here, the Appalachians are over here, and in between, relatively flat, is the Dakotas and Kansas and Iowa and even Missouri and Arkansas and Louisiana. Look, there's hills, we know that, and there's the Ozark Mountains, but they're nothing like the Rocky Mountains that would really impede cold air and warm air hitting each other. So there's this relatively flat area in the middle of the United States where cold air and warm air can mix. Again, just one ingredient doesn't mean you're going to get a tornado. The other thing we get, though, is we get these strong winds aloft from the west or northwest, and we get these warm lower winds from the Gulf of Mexico. That creates air spinning in between. This is called shear. So if you have air spinning and you get a thunderstorm that hits that spinning air, it does that. Now you have a spinning thunderstorm called a supercell. So we have the ingredients to create a spinning thunderstorm. And even only 1 out of 4 of those produces a tornado. But that's why, really. It's because of the way that our winds are and the way that we don't have any mountains in between the cold and the warm air. We have that humidity from the Gulf of Mexico. It all adds up to the U.S. is the tornado capital of the United States. By the way, 1,200 sounds like a lot, and it is. The vast majority of those are weak. The types of tornadoes that can't even take a roof off of a house, okay? So don't be scared, just be prepared, because we know some higher end tornadoes happen, but most of the time they're really weak. Another name for a sandstorm is haboob. Gritty, it's not Gritty. Gritty is the creepy mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers. I miss hockey, so I had to throw that in there. Joe Dirt or Sandwall. So Sandwall makes sense because that's really what this is, but that's not really the name. Sandstorm, they call them sometimes, but it's a haboob. Yeah, a haboob. It's an Arabic word, but this basically is a sandstorm, often called a haboob, that can be, look how tall, 3,000 to 5,000 feet tall. And they're talking about more than 7 arches stacked on top of each other. Wow, those things are huge. Now, can you survive that? Yeah, absolutely. It's going to hurt. You're going to want to probably have a scarf or one of those masks over your mouth because you don't want to breathe in the fine particulate matter that is the dust. All right, this is our last one. Last question. I'll kind of open it up to questions. Brody says he's 5 for 5. Love it, dude. Keep it going. I'm curious how the cases are doing today because his younger brother, Hamilton, beat him on the last quiz. Jack and Hamilton. So we'll see how they're doing. The longest tornado path was estimated to be at least... Now, if you Google this, and by the way, the video I showed there was just a cool video of a tornado. It's not the actual longest path tornado. And here's why. Because the actual longest path tornado is from 1925. No one has video of it. But it was at least 151 miles long. If you Google this, you're going to come up with 219 a lot of times. But I'm basing this off of some meteorologists, some scientists, and I have the link down here, that actually went back and tried to look at the damage based on the records. Look, records from 1925 work great, but they did their research, and these are brilliant meteorologists, so I really trust and wanted to kind of cite their work here. They think at least a consistent damage path on the ground for 151 miles. They just couldn't find, for instance, right here, records that show that the tornado was on the ground. That doesn't mean it wasn't. Doesn't mean it wasn't. So their research said at least 151, and it could be 235 miles long. So the Tri-State tornado from March 18th, 1925, if you were going to walk the entire, let's assume it was an entire 235-mile damage path, it would take you 3 days. There's St. Louis, and there's the Tri-State, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. It is the deadliest single tornado in United States history. It is the longest path. It is a freak of nature type of storm that we don't quite understand fully because, again, it happened in the 20s. But it does show you that rarely on occasion, you can get these incredible storms. The Jandies, I got 4 out of 10. Hey, you know what? I tell my kids all the time, learning is not about getting 10 out of 10. If you got 10 out of 10 on this quiz, what do you need me for, right? So learning is about failing. When you fail, you actually remember what you failed, you correct it, you learn, and you're going to sound really smart when you go talk to your friends and tell them about the Tri-State tornado path. Hammy got 4 and Jack got 3 from the cases. Wow, Hammy is still winning in that contest in that family. Again, it's not really about how many you got right. What this really is about is learning, and hopefully you learned. Again, if you got 10 out of 10, you probably didn't learn a thing, and you don't need me. And there's probably some of you out there that are just so smart you really don't need me. In fact, there is. Megan Kell just said 10 out of 10. All right, hey, we've got a little bit more time before I have to get on a conference call at work. So does anyone have any questions? And I'll just kind of open it up and fly around to graphics that are about what you want to learn about. Riley, 13, is interested in chasing tornadoes. So chasing is more dangerous than spotting. So let's start with this, especially at your age. Take a storm spotting class. We offer one in January. National Weather Service usually, not now because of social distancing, but usually offers them too. But learn about storm spotting so you learn the basics of storms. Then there's something called Skywarn, which is, they'll have some more advanced classes. I think they offer them online. And then never chase alone, always chase with a partner. So this is going to be when you're much older, and make sure you have the equipment. The best way to do that is find people who already chase. We've got some great storm chasers that are smart, safe, they keep a distance, they don't get too excited and get too close. And some of them are local here in St. Louis, and they're very smart. And going with them, even 2 or 3 times, you would get so much out of that. So try to find local chasers. Usually, like when you go to college and major in meteorology, you'll find some people who have that experience. Hey, Templeton, I got a question. I like that. Hey, Templeton. It's not even a friend of mine. Just, hey, Templeton, I got a question for you. Where was that? How was the biggest hail? Was the question. The biggest hail is huge. It's almost the size of a volleyball. Again, I'm going to fly through some pictures here just to show you. There it is. That's the biggest piece of hail. Look at that. It's 18.5 inches around. So that's a ruler and a half around. But the diameter, like just cutting across the diameter, well, it's 8 inches. A volleyball is 8.1 to 8.4. So that is the biggest piece of hail. Typically, when you get hail that big, it's spiky because other hail have frozen onto it. So typically, big hail, if you look closely, it's not one smooth piece. Or if it is smooth, it was a bunch of pieces of hail that froze. And then as it tumbled through the air, the tumbling kind of smoothed around the edges and made it look like one smooth piece of hail. But it actually, sometimes when it's that big, most of the time it's that big, it's actually chunks that have formed together. Rainey, who's age 10, wants to know, how does a flash flood form? So flash flooding is different than river flooding. River flooding is when the rivers overflow. Usually happens very slow. Flash means quick. Usually we say within 6 hours. And the way it happens is you just get too much water. And you have to think, what does water do? It always sinks down to the lowest level it possibly can. It takes that path of least resistance. Its gravity brings it down to a low spot. So if you have 4 inches of rain in an hour or 2 hours in this location, but that location is kind of a hill, that's not where the flooding is going to happen. It's going to flow downhill into the lower spots or the valleys. That's where it's going to be more dangerous. So flash flooding occurs from heavy rain. Typically, not always, but typically around here especially, you need thunder, because thunderstorms indicate the atmosphere is squeezing out at a very high rate as much water as it can in a small amount of time. That's what the high rate means. So it's a lot of water in a little bit of time. So thunderstorms usually tell us we're going to get a lot of rain over a little amount of time. And then you have to look at how saturated the ground is, because if the ground hasn't had rain in a while, it can absorb it and take it. If the ground has had a lot of rain and there's no more for it to go, it's kind of spongy already, that water's not going to sink down into the ground. It's going to sit, and it sits, and it sits, and it flows, and it flows, and it flows, and more rain and more rain. Next thing you know, it's a raging flash flood. Let me show you, just to give you an idea of what I mean by raging. Let's see if I have a picture. This happened in Park Hills. Yeah, there you go. I'll play this video for you. So Park Hills is southern part of our viewing area in St. Francis County, and that's just a street. I mean, look at that. Isn't that incredible? So the water didn't have anywhere to go. It flowed down to this kind of low point where all the water collected, and boom, you get that. By the way, go ahead and give me your name and age. I'll give you a shout out too as you ask some of these questions. So Kayla wants to know how fast tornado rotation can be. That is a great question. There's two types of motion on a tornado. There's the rotation. That's the part that we try to guesstimate based on damage. And then there's how fast it moves forward. The forward motion is usually anywhere from like 30 miles on average to maybe 60 miles an hour. It's pretty fast. But that spinning, that can happen at around 301 miles per hour. That's the fastest we know of, and that's just based on Doppler radar on a truck that drove around and tried to spy. You can come in, Drew. My kids are peering in. Hey, Drew, how are you? Hi. Okay, so that is the fastest wind speed, 301 plus or minus 20 miles per hour, and that's the radar, and that's the truck. And it was, I think it was the May 3rd, 1999 tornado in Oklahoma City. Nick said Dow. That's exactly right. They call it the Dow, D-O-W, or Doppler on wheels. Christian, who's age 9, wants to know what was the biggest and fastest tornado? Hurricane. I don't know what the fastest hurricane is. The biggest was Typhoon Tip. Let's see. I think I have a picture of that. There it is. Typhoon Tip. So this is the biggest, and it was about, so a typhoon is the same thing as a hurricane, and it's just in a different part of the world. So like in the Pacific, maybe headed towards China, Japan, they would call it a typhoon, but it's the same thing. Now you take that, and its size is about St. Louis to Vegas. I mean, it's huge. Now keep in mind, the strongest winds are near the middle, and then it gets weaker and weaker and weaker the farther you get out. But still, you're talking about a really strong storm. What? Okay. Drew, my kiddo Drew, wants you to know that the middle of a hurricane is actually weak. And he's right. The eye of the hurricane is actually winds that are descending, and it's rather weak. And it's the eye wall, the clouds right around that where the strongest winds are.
Part of the hurricane.
All right. We all know you're a genius, Drew. All right, thank you. I saw from Alex Cavanaugh, he wants to know if I've ever been storm chasing. Yeah, I have. Although because of my kiddo Drew and my other one, I don't go as often. But if you're smart about it, it doesn't have to be dangerous. But yeah, I've been chasing in Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, Oklahoma. Still haven't seen a tornado. Got close on one in Oklahoma, and the forward speed on it was like 65 miles per hour. And it was going in an area where the roads were bad. So I was with a professional, actually, and he told me, a professional storm chaser, and he knows those roads, and he said, hey, we shouldn't be on those roads. If it gets wet, you can get stuck and you get in a dangerous position. So we turned around, and then boom, produced a tornado, and we missed it. But that's life. That's okay. Let's see. My mom has been inside a hurricane. Yeah, if you get in a hurricane, it can be torrential inside the cloud part of it, but when you get in the eye, it, just like Drew said, is really weak winds. Let's see here. Learned a lot from the right person. Nice job, Nick. William, 9, 7 out of 10 on the quiz from a 9-year-old? That's fantastic. Nice job to William. From Sarah, McCann, and Ruth. That's really impressive. Jack Fenderson wanted to know, what is the worst storm coming into St. Louis that you have forecasted? Actually, I don't know if I'd call it the worst, but the worst tornado damage we've had in recent history was on this date, 9 years ago, 2011. We had what's called the Good Friday tornado. No one was killed in that tornado, though, so that is the really good news. We've had some real bad ice storms, and we've had some real bad wind storms that knocked out power to 500,000 people. So in 2006, we lost power during the heat wave in the summer. 500,000 people without power. That was brutal. But then those winds weakened the trees so that from was it June or July when we had that windstorm, you come down to November and December, we got an ice storm. All that ice and those weakened tree limbs made the tree limbs fall onto power lines. We had another 500,000 people, this time in winter when it's cold, without power. So those two storms are really kind of linked. My answer to the worst storm is always the storm that impacts you. We could have a storm that doesn't do much damage, but if it takes the roof off your house, if it takes a tree down in your house, that is the worst storm. And sometimes it's a severe thunderstorm, sometimes it's a tornado. The worst tornado to hit St. Louis is probably the 1896 cyclone that went right through like Lafayette Square and into downtown, and it's one of the top 10 deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history. From the Strasburgers, thank you, Steve. Very interesting. Can't wait to share what we've learned. That's awesome. I hope you do share. And that's the point. Karen Johnson, whoever kiddo is there, said he got 4 out of 10, or she. And hey, don't worry about how many you got. First of all, it's not worth half your grade. Second of all, I really, really think that in order to learn, you need to fail. So sometimes, getting 4 right is great, and getting 6 wrong means you're going to remember those and you just learn something. That's what this is all about, learning. I try to tell that to my kids too, because they get frustrated when I'm homeschooling them and they can't figure it out. Well, working through the problem and figuring it out is how you learn. No one woke up and was Einstein all of a sudden. Even Einstein had to work at it. Sharon Bradford wants to know, how do hurricanes form? They actually start as a cluster of storms rotating around each other, and they create their own low pressure system. And you need 2 things. You need warm water, typically about 79 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit and warmer. That's why there's a hurricane season. That's when the water's that warm. And then the other thing is you need to leave them alone, because cold fronts or strong jet streams will tear apart these storms that are creating their own little weather system. A lot of times they can form just in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Atlantic near the U.S., but a lot of times they form off the coast of Africa, and they run across the ocean, and then they turn up towards the U.S., and they can either hit the U.S. or they can kind of make a hard turn and go back out to sea and miss us completely. That's why sometimes there's hurricanes that you don't even know existed, because they don't affect you. They affect islands or shipping routes, or don't affect the coast of the United States. All right. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed Steve's Storm School. I hope you enjoyed the quiz and learned from it. Doesn't matter what your grade was on it. I hope you had fun. I'll be here again next Wednesday, probably with more of an open Q&A, so you can bring your questions, bring your friends, and maybe do a little research too. Some of the terms you've heard, feel free to Google them and try to do some research on your own. And if there's something you get stuck on, you don't quite understand, bring me that question next Wednesday. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Have a safe day. Be safe. Stay healthy. Take care, everybody.